Ted says no to another excellent adventure with John Kasich.
From the Battelle studio at WOSU at COSI, this is Columbus on the Record. Joining Mike Thompson this week, Joe Hallett, senior editor for the Columbus Dispatch, Karen Kassler, State House bureau chief for Ohio Public Radio and TV, Terry Casey, Republican strategist, and Brian Rothenberg, director of Progress Ohio.
Democrats looking to win back the governor's office faced a problem. The most popular, best-known Democrat they had to run against John Kasich was the man who lost the governor's office to John Kasich. Well, Ted Strickland has made Democrats' situation a little easier or a little harder, depending on your point of view. Strickland announced this week he would not run in 2014. He said it was a tough decision, but promised that he and his wife, Frances, will continue to be politically active private citizens. They will continue to stand with working men and women to build a stronger Ohio and to defeat anti-worker and anti-middle-class legislation that may arise. Republicans seemed indifferent, saying Governor Kasich will be very comfortable talking about his record in Ohio's job growth over the past 2 years, no matter who he runs against. Karen Kassler, in that statement, no mention as to why Ted Strickland is not going to run. What are some of the theories?
Well, I think some of the theories are that he's 71 years old and that he would come into the race already having been defeated by Governor Kasich, as you mentioned. Also, I think the big issue is the money. The money that it will take to run in this race is a lot, and perhaps maybe former Governor Strickland was not in the mood to raise the kind of money that it's going to take, because it's going to take millions and millions of dollars, and it has to start right away, or else there just simply won't be enough time to raise the money that it's going to need.
And Joe knows that the election officials of both parties have been in Columbus the past couple days, and I have some friends who talked to some of the Democrats, including one labor person in a major urban area. They were really disappointed this week because they viewed Ted Strickland as a guy who could bring in the Senate Bill 5 issue. He had the name ID. To a lot of Democrats, a lot of labor people, they viewed him as the gold standard, and they really wish he was the candidate.
But you know, people were saying this back in 2005 when we were gearing up and Petro and Blackwell were going to run. And the fact of the matter is, it's 2 years, it's a lifetime in politics. Whoever runs for governor is going to wind up with 90% name recognition by the time it's over. And if you look at the overall numbers, and you're even looking at the polling, in this state you automatically have 33%. Even Helen Smith did back in 2002 with no money. In this case with the governor, he's, because of issue 2, Senate Bill 5, he's probably in that, going to always be in that 44-45% range. You're talking about 6 percentage points to win an election. It's going to be a tight election.
Joe, surprised that Ted Strickland took a pass?
Not really. Karen mentioned his age, although he looks great.
He sounds great. He's got a lot of energy.
I think that the Democrats benefit by having a fresh face, and we're hearing Ed Fitzgerald of Cuyahoga County and Rich Cordray of Grove City, because in many respects, Strickland might have been the easiest candidate for Kasich to run against, because as I mentioned here before, you know, he had the misfortune of governing during the recession when we had all these job losses, estimated 400,000. It was a ready-made campaign for Kasich, who can now boast that about 140,000 new jobs have been created on his watch. So, you know, again, it was a Kasich could say, you want to turn back to the old days?
It's a matter of timing. Now attention turns to the next man up or the next woman up, and it looks like we do have a front runner if he decides to run.
I wanted to be very respectful of Governor Strickland's schedule and his timetable, but I've been encouraged by what I've been told since that date. I've accelerated my timetable, so I'll be saying something official pretty soon. I think it's important for the Democratic Party to have an announced candidate relatively soon to tell the other side of the story of what the Kasich record has been.
Karen, he sounds like a candidate.
Sure, and I think the other thing that it's important for the party to have is not just an announced candidate, but one candidate. I think the idea of there being a primary is really something that the party doesn't want. You saw what happened in 2006 between Ken Blackwell and Jim Petro, and what a primary did to those two candidates, depleted their funds, beat them both up, and I think there's a concern that that might happen in this one. We also, you mentioned the man or woman who might come forward. We have Betty Sutton now, the former congresswoman. She had lost in that race against Jim Renacci up in Northeast Ohio. She's now apparently looking for an opportunity. She says she's interested in being governor. Other people are talking about her in other roles as well.
And one of the things that Brian mentioned about it's nice to have a new face, that's kind of right. The only problem is Republicans looked at how well Barack Obama defined his opponent. Well, when you have somebody that's not as well known, it's easier for the other side to define them, and then that makes it harder to pull out of that hole.
This election is going to be about John Kasich. It's going to be about the gaffes that he makes and whether he can control them. It's going to be about whether or not he can control. He's got absolutely control in the legislature. Will he be controlling the Tea Party? Will he be controlling the right wing? Will he be stirring people up that are going to get active in a campaign?
But for the past 6 months, Fitzgerald's big issue has been, well, John Kasich shouldn't sell the Turnpike. Well, guess what? Kasich is not going to sell the Turnpike. So what is Fitzgerald's issue now?
Debt for years.
Joe, you mentioned Richard Cordray. We mentioned Betty Sutton. Tim Ryan, the congressman from Northeast Ohio. Are they all going to look at that Fitzgerald soundbite and say, he's in, I'm not going to bother?
I think he scares out Sutton and Ryan. I don't think he scares out Cordray. Cordray won't talk about it because he can't in his federal position. I talked to him last week, and he wouldn't even go off the record and talk about it, so I don't know what he's going to do.
But you wrote Greg Haas took that as he's considering it because he didn't say no.
Exactly. He could have said and put it to rest, I am not going to run, and that would have been that. But he didn't say that, so I don't think we can count him out.
And Cordray still has his home here, his wife, the two daughters. He really has a lot of family pressure to get back to Ohio, and in some ways he will have completed the big missions he had for the Obama administration.
Let me ask about this primary. Parties never want primaries because they want to have nice and neat and spend all their money fighting the next guy. But Brian, wouldn't a primary, if it was not terribly nasty, help name recognition? Because you'd have a campaign all early winter, late winter, spring.
You know, Paul Tips, the old chairman for the Ohio Democratic Party, used to always say, everybody's afraid of a primary, but primaries aren't bad. Because you find out who's a tough candidate. It's a big state. You find out who can handle it. The bad part is it costs a lot of money because then you're going to have to go back to some of those same donors and get that money a second time. That is a problem. But a lot of the donors don't like those primaries. You know, from his standpoint, in talking to him over the years, he's always said it's not bad. And in 2006, the Democrats had a lot of down-ticket primaries, and they had a good year.
Primaries, unfortunately, force candidates to be somebody they're not because they have to cater to either the left or the right wing of the party. We saw that with Mitt Romney last year. So I don't think they're good. Plus, they cost a boatload of money. And I think Fitzgerald wants to do it, but he's got the same considerations. He's got a job right now that he could win hands down. It pays $31,000 more than the governor's job. He's got 4 kids at home. He's looking at raising anywhere from $20 to $30 million. It's a tough decision.
Well, let's get back to Ted Strickland. Karen, could it be that Ted Strickland is not running because he didn't think he could win?
There's always that possibility. I mean, like I said, he comes into the race having the baggage of being the one who lost to Governor Kasich. And certainly he's gained in popularity and gotten out there and done a lot of things in terms of Senate Bill 5. But nobody wants to lose. Nobody enters a race wanting to lose.
The bottom line is the economy has gotten better. And that's the oftentimes is the bottom line.
Throughout the campaign, if he'd have been running, all he would hear about was, well, when he was governor, unemployment was at 10.9%. Now we're a full percentage point below the national level.
He could argue, though, that his policies actually started that downward trend.
I don't think the campaign's going to be about Kasich gaffes. The Democrats will bring that up. The campaign's going to be what it's always about in Ohio, and that's the economy, and it's getting better, and that helps John Kasich.
Okay. As he begins the second half of his term, Governor Kasich has yet to fully implement the first piece of legislation that he signed. House Bill 1 from way back in 2011 formed Jobs Ohio, the quasi-private development effort. The entity was to have the money and the flexibility to offer incentives to companies to come to Ohio. Funding would come from leasing the state's liquor business for 25 years. Critics say Jobs Ohio is unconstitutional. They sued. The courts have yet to decide, but the Kasich administration is moving ahead with the plan anyway. Brian Rothenberg, your group, Progress Ohio, was one of the ones who sued. What do you make of this effort to move forward while it's still pending in the courts?
I think it's irresponsible. No court has ever actually ruled on the constitutionality of this program. The fact of the matter is, even when Jobs Ohio sued the state of Ohio, when the state of Ohio filed their briefs, they acknowledged the severe constitutional problems with this. The bonds are not going to be rated as highly because nobody knows what can happen. That case is still stuck in the Supreme Court. And the real thing that the administration should do, up or down, is the Supreme Court said to them, take your case back to the trial court. Let's have the trial court decide whether this is constitutional or not. $100 million, don't you think we should know whether it's constitutional before we borrow money?
Yes, but Brian, on that case, the first judge, a Democrat trial judge, basically said it was okay. You had a court of appeals.
No, they
Democrat
didn't. That was overstanding, Terry. That had nothing to do with the constitutionality.
Well, but you lost. I mean, a lot of people view
over whether anybody had the right to sue, nothing about the constitutionality.
Well, but basically it's rolled ahead in several different ways. The Supreme Court of Ohio had the chance to knock it down if they wanted
it's
to,
still
and they
pending.
passed it. And the biggest thing is
the Supreme Court,
if the bond rating agencies give it a green light and bond people want to buy the bonds, that's the marketplace speaking that they feel confident that the legality is not a big problem.
Is John Kasich just trying to force the issue? It's been since July that the ruling basically putting it on the aside for now. It's been 2 years since it was signed into law. Is he just trying to say, look, force the issue, make someone decide, and let's go on this?
Well, again, if the bond people buy the bonds, that's the best sign that they feel it's legal and appropriate. And there's obviously a lot of groups, don't mean to be disrespectful, but a lot of times groups on the other side like to file lawsuits because it helps them raise money.
What other side? I mean, we've got the 1851 Law Society, a libertarian group that joined me. There are legitimate constitutional questions.
Also known as Tea Party.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've never really been a fan of Jobs Ohio. I understand why the governor created it, and I think his reasons are laudable, that a lot of these companies are dealing with have proprietary information they need to keep secret. They need to keep these deals under the radar screen. I understand all that, but the whole secretive nature of where the money comes from and how it goes out. I've been around State House for 30 years. I've covered one pay-to-play scandal after another. This just looks ripe for that kind of thing.
Karen, if they go out and they start awarding money to companies, they use the bond money to start offering incentives to companies, and then 6 months from now or a year from now the courts say unconstitutional, then what happens?
I don't know. That's a very good question, and I think that's why this whole issue that Brian and Maurice Thompson at the 1851 Center have been forcing, or trying to force anyway, and even the Kasich administration tried to force it when they had David Goodman, the Commerce Director, not sign the transfer to try to get the Ohio Supreme Court to rule on whether this was constitutional or not, and the court decided not to. I think that's a real issue, is what happens if you go ahead and do this, and then down the road the ruling comes back. What do you do then?
Well, the other question is, even if it is constitutional, what happens if John Kasich gets beat in 2 years and a Democrat comes in and says, we're not going to do this anymore? So we go through, we have to come up with a new jobs program for Ohio.
Terry, do we need this? I mean, it's been operating much less, at a much lower capacity than it was designed, but you just talked about all the jobs you've created. Do we really need Jobs Ohio?
Well, quite frankly, in Ohio, we've still got a lot of people that need jobs and a lot of people that need better jobs. So I don't think if the Democrats want to stand up and say we don't need jobs and we're happy the way things are now, I hope they stick to that position, because there's an awful lot of Ohioans that know we need to do better and can do better economically.
Well, first of all, you keep bringing up Democrats, and the Tea Party is with me on this lawsuit, so that's the first thing. The second thing is I'm all for jobs, but I'm also for following the Constitution, and this is $100 million of public money going to a private agency without anybody knowing what's going to happen with it. Our Constitution says that you can't do these type of things. And quite frankly, Terry, there's got to be constitutional ways to do this.
Well, but Brian, you don't wear a robe and you're not on the Supreme Court. And in fact, historically, a lot of times courts give the benefit of the doubt to the legislature to create laws. So if I was going to bet and wager, I'd say it's going to be upheld and it's going to keep moving forward.
Well, I don't gamble, but we'll have to see.
Brian, does your organization, can you have any legal recourse at this point?
I believe that actually, if they go forward and move the bonds, there will probably be. We've had a couple conference calls now where we've talked about what we can do going forward. We might actually have some ability to finally go in and get this constitutional issue decided that we would have as a remedy to try to do that, getting around this whole issue of standing. The irony of all of this is if the Attorney General and the administration had never decided to argue this standing issue over whether anyone had the right to sue, we probably would already know whether it's constitutional, and this would have been over with.
Okay. Let's get to our next topic. For months, Republicans have been railing against health insurance mandates. Mandates to buy insurance, mandates that insurance plans cover contraception and other medical conditions. Well, there's a new insurance mandate in the works. Starting in Ohio next year, health insurance companies will be required to cover treatment for autism. Advocates say it'll help thousands of families cope with the costly treatments. Opponents say it'll drive up premiums and hurt businesses. Here's the twist. It's not a Democrat who issued the mandate.
Everybody is special. And with this action, frankly, Ohio moves to the front of the pack in the country. I mean, we have these early intervention services, we have the education scholarship, but all of that still left a hole for families who wanted to get help and treatment and education for their young children.
Terry, I think we all know people who have been touched by autism, coworkers, family members. No one, I don't think, is going to argue the need for money to help with the treatment. But why should government be mandating it?
Well, I think one of the key differences is when the federal government tells every state's got to do something, and then they keep piling on the requirements and let the state pay for it, you lose control. When a state can decide this is something that's worth the cost, it benefits the people, and to be honest, I can't wait for the Democrats to be attacking John Kasich for trying to help families and help kids, because they're going to look pretty stupid and silly. But it's about a state, and Ohio can make that decision and then they can control it. It's not something like Obamacare where once you sign on board, you're stuck with the bill forever and ever.
You sound a lot like a man who just ran for president. But it's still a mandate. In some business groups, it's not a huge expense, but neither was contraception. But it's still a mandate. Government's saying you need to do this. Well, why not let the free market say we're going to offer autism treatment and our product will be more attractive to everybody, and that's why we should do it.
Well, but you need some minimum standards, and believe me, the parents, the families, there's a real intensity, and I think the governor was to a certain extent making the point, if you can do more early, it can be a lot cheaper to the families in our society than if you wait too late.
This is actually one area where the governor has come with advocates, and it kind of is a bipartisan sort of issue. When you do this, it's not necessarily just the mandate. It actually does save money when you get into early intervention, when you're starting to deal with this. And so, but it's not just autism. That's part of what the whole ACA is about, is sort of getting ahead of the curve, doing preventative medicine. And I think when you get beyond the rhetoric, I think what the governor actually did was an acknowledgement that this stuff really does work, and there is a way for us to come together and make this work.
And there's a constituency that's also pretty happy about this. Ohio Right to Life actually weighed in on this and said that they were pleased to see this as well. So this constituency of the pro-life movement that's weighing in on this is also praising Governor Kasich for it.
This is really the aspect of Governor Kasich I like best. He does come off as brusque and kind of ornery, but the guy does have a heart, and he does have a heart, particularly when it comes to mental illness. He has some in his own family, and time after time he has stepped to the plate, and he gets a lot of accolades from the mental health community for doing so. And he didn't have to do this. I just think he did it because his heart told him to.
Watching that news conference, I mean, he looked like he was getting emotional at some points. He seemed pretty genuinely moved by the plight of these families. But let's run down the week's events. You had the autism insurance mandate, extra money for mental health treatment. The puppy mill bill, where he brought the dogs out and
pictures
put them
of that
on the
are-
desk. I wish I had them to show.
Oh,
I
they're
sort of-
amazing.
Are they trying to show the softer side, Joe, of John
This guy is
Kasich?
running for re-election, you know. So we're going to get a budget next month that I guess probably will not be as harsh as the last one was. I think local governments probably won't get any more money, but they probably won't get a cut. We'll see changes in education. He's. I think he's starting to gear up for re-election, and his team is very well aware of images that sell with the public, and they're pulling out all the strings right now.
And where do they really get in gear? Because I think the budget's going to be something that, and part of it, as the Ohio economy has gotten better, for every 1% lower you are in unemployment, it's a lot more money in income tax receipts, and people then have money to buy things and they pay sales tax. So I think this budget is going to surprise people that there's a lot of good things in there, and that's hard to catch up on and be a naysayer.
There's a school funding formula, though, that's likely to be in there, and that could be very, very interesting.
That could be divisive. If he does a massive income tax cut, that could be very divisive. You know, kissing babies, puppies.
They were cute puppies.
Yeah, they were cute puppies. I agree
white,
with that.
fluffy puppies, front page of the Dispatch.
That was, he had
You know what
very
they say?
fluffy puppies.
TV, kids, pets, and weather. We got to get to hockey, though. Over its 11 years, the Blue Jackets have had many slogans: carry the flag, ignite the night, you got to see it live. Now it might be, please come back. The NHL lockout is over. Half the season is saved. The Blue Jackets begin play in a week or so. Now attention turns to the long-term viability of the franchise. Joe Hallett, the team has been losing money. This agreement, does it help the Blue Jackets come to profitability and maybe help them put a better product on the ice?
Well, the only thing that really will help them come to profitability is to put a good team on the ice, get in the playoffs, and extend the season. But it does help, particularly in the short term, because the collective bargaining agreement pushes back the salary cap to about $64 million. It was going to rise to about, I think, $70.2 million.
Yeah.
It gives the owners more revenue. They now split the league revenue 50-50. Players were getting 57% of the revenue. It helps clubs, poor teams like Columbus, because it increases the amount of revenue sharing up to $200 million now. But the problem is it expands the number of teams that can get money.
Yeah.
And finally, it over the long term, though, as the league revenues expand, so too do the player salaries, and this means that the richer teams, the Torontos, Montreals, Vancouvers, Bostons, will be able to afford better players.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing in the short term for the Blue Jackets. Over the long term, I'm not sure it does
They
much.
got to win. That's the bottom line.
I hate to bother and rain on Joe's parade, but I mean, the Blue Jackets weren't just the worst team in the NHL last year. They were a distant last, and then they've lost their best player, Rick Nash.
They're undefeated right now.
I know, and that's what I'm afraid of. When they start the season, that undefeated string is going to be gone.
But it wasn't an issue of money because they had one of the higher payrolls in the NHL last year.
Well, that's part of the ineptitude, and the sad thing is, young John McConnell, he might not be losing $14 million a year with the subsidies taken out of the casino money that could have gone to improve our Columbus streets and other services. They siphoned off part of it for the arena. But still, even if you're losing $7 million a year, he just doesn't have the deep pockets that his father had, and it's still, I think, a very problematic long-term future for the team.
Well, and nobody really won by this strike, but I do want to say this because we just bought that arena, and that is the big loser is the taxpayer, because the reason we bought that arena supposedly was for job creation, bringing people here.
I would dispute that. It has created jobs. Basically, every arena in the country, including the Browns and the Bengals, is taxpayer funded. What this does is when I moved here in '85, this really was a definition of a cow town. One of the things that made Columbus an exciting city, that helped the arena district, that helped all this job creation in the city, Short North, blossom, was this hockey team.
No, I agree. But when they go out on strike, When that
sure it
happens,
hurts.
I mean, that hurts our economy, and those
when-
businesses really hurt.
And when they're pathetic losers, because Columbus is a town that likes a winner, whether it's Ohio State, it's the Memorial Tournament. We like winners. We don't like paying big ticket dollars for parking concessions and tickets with a losing team.
Wow, who knew the Blue Jackets would bring us together?
Absolutely, absolutely.
There's a win right there.
They're underachievers, Terry, underachievers. Anyway, that's our final parting shots, our off-the-record comments, and Brian Rothenberg, you're up first.
I think if you read through the tea leaves that Rick, when it comes down to it, Rich Cordray is really interested in running for governor, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
And I agree again. We think Cordray ought to be running too. We're all for a primary. My prediction is this week one of the big stories in the Dispatch was AEP's solar thing got shut down, and I think it's about time because sometimes people have problems with the laws of physics and economics. Why settle other other electric payers to subsidize a solar thing? Because at night and in the winter, you just don't get much solar electricity out of those things.
Karen.
On this, the 26th anniversary of The Drive, I would like to wish Rod Chazinski good luck with the Browns. It's nice to see him back on the payroll for the third time as the new coach, this time at least. And I'd like to remind everybody that pitchers and catchers report in a month, because there are only 2 seasons, winter and baseball.
And new manager for the Indians as well.
Yes.
Well, I'll predict the rest of the Democratic ticket in 2014. It'll be Nina Turner running against John Huston for Secretary of State, David Pepper running against Mike DeWine for Attorney General, John Carney against Dave Yost for Auditor, and the Representative Connie Pillage running against Josh Mandel.
And Governor?
At this point, I'd say Ed Fitzgerald, but don't count out Rich Cordray.
All right. My off-the-record comment appears that the Blue Jackets' regular season schedule will not feature any teams from the East Coast, just Western Conference opponents. So that means that the Blue Jackets will not face former player Rick Nash of the New York Rangers until the Stanley Cup Finals. So that is Columbus on the Record for this week. Please check us out online. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. You can get to all of that at wosu.org/COTR. For our crew, for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.
Your prediction.